Now more than ever, innovative technologies are fueling change and sparking new ways of thinking. Collaboration between corporations and startups is key to staying at the forefront of these trends. However, finding the right startups can be expensive, time-consuming, and ineffective. But Plug and Play is here to help. As a corporate partner, you will gain access to a whole ecosystem of innovation. Discover startups that meet your tech interests. Stay updated on the latest trends and network with industry peers. We will help you during every stage of your innovation journey, no matter where you are and where you want to go. Get in touch today.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. Today, we're going to go through how to effectively leverage AI in an evolving underwriting environment with our friends from ReMark, as well as two very interesting startups. My name is Soldulanto, and I'll be your moderator today. I'm a ventures analyst from the InsurTech team here at Plug and Play. And without further ado, this is the agenda we'll be covering today. We're going to start with a keynote session from the ReMark team, following up with some startup pitches from iCover and Lazarus. And we're going to end the webinar with some panel Q&A as well as some closing remarks. So now I'd like to introduce you to James Lynch, the head of digital solutions at ReMark and Score Digital Solutions. James is an actuary with over a decade of data science and leadership experience. He has founded various data and actuarial science teams at large and small companies in both the traditional and insurtech spaces. Most recently, James and his team have been focused on using AI models to achieve a faster, cheaper, less invasive, and more accurate underwriting process. So now I'll leave the floor to you, James.
So how to effectively leverage AI in an evolving underwriting environment. So I'm James Lynch, I'm head of digital solutions for the Americas. ReMark, just a bit of background, ReMark is part of digital solutions. Digital solutions is the area of Score that's focused on technology solutions. We offer a broad range of solutions for marketing, underwriting, claims, and health and wellness. Velogica is the digital underwriting product. And so this product exists in the US, Europe, and Asia. And like I said, I'm the head of the Americas region for it. So I'm highly invested in digital underwriting. And as you can see with my background of actuarial and data science, I'm very interested in moving this space forward in an innovative and future-ready way. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. But first, we'll have a quick poll from the audience. So it's nice to be on with you all today. So what is the biggest challenge faced by underwriters today? I think it'd be interesting to see your response. So we'll just give you 1 minute or so to answer. Data entry is inadequate info, poor rate indication, sure. Adapt themselves into the new era of dominance partnership. I'm just going to read a couple. With AI tools, okay. Synthesizing disparate sources of info into a complete risk profile. I can definitely identify with that one. Let's keep going. Data and how to consume it effectively, that's for sure an issue, right? How to get the data from raw into something that's underwritable or resembles underwriting or is useful for risk. Fragmented info, not having complete hit rates on things for sure. Speed, some vendors take longer than others. Some data sources take longer to generate specifically, like questions and things like that. Regulatory environment, always, you can't leave that one off, right? We need to make sure that we're fair and we're playing within the boundaries set by the regulators. And there's even more emphasis on artificial intelligence and ML, which I believe is a good thing, since some of these tools can actually be used to help, progress our ideas of what fairness is and measure it. Manual processes are time-consuming, outdated models, unstructured data. Yes, that's correct. I think teams can spend a lot of time with unstructured data, and sometimes it's worth it, sometimes it's not, right? But either way, it's a big endeavor. Maybe one to think about: buy versus build. It's accurate, data-driven underwriting plus efficiency. Yes, that's what we're trying to do, right? That's what we're all trying to do. I think that's the biggest target for all of us. Assessing risk in changing environment, keeping pace with the competition, new ways to assess. Absolutely. I think one of the key areas of the presentation is going to be around flexibility and having your systems be flexible to keep pace with change, but also to accept change and to understand that it's probably there as a constant, as a new constant. Volumes of data is a problem for some folks. I think it's a good problem for data scientists. It can be the other problem, the other end of the spectrum is you don't have enough data, which is the frustrating one sometimes, but it's a hard limitation on what can be done. And automation rate, right? We're trying to drive that automation rate up. So these are really, really right on target with the presentation. So I think I'd like to jump right into it. Thanks for your participating in the survey. I think I'm going to close it, Sol. So let me know if that's a problem. I think it's okay. All right, here we go. Okay, great. Again, thanks for your feedback. I think it's really well aligned with what I want to talk about today. A bit about the market perspective. So digital underwriting, from my perspective, is still an unsolved problem. The traditional underwriting process, just a bit of background, it's long, it's invasive, it's costly, but it's still the most accurate. The market is trying to do more online. Every year we do more sales online, we have higher automation rates, we drive those automation rates up to higher face amounts, and we're relaxing the rules wherever we can. This is driving the demand for what I'm calling a fully digital underwriting process. Instant processes exist today, but most instant underwriting processes are for accelerated products, which are priced higher. They're priced for that underwriting and accuracy. They're accepting some of that risk in due to the higher prices. But even at these higher prices, age and face amount rules and other rules, they make some people not eligible for that instant process. So, in today's market, consumers face a choice. They must choose between automation and price, and you can't have both, not yet. Fully underwritten products have the lowest price, as we know, the lowest automation levels. Some of them are very much on purpose. Fully underwritten products are very happy sometimes with 0% automation. That's just fine. But they can go up to a moderate to small amount of automation, up to 30%. Accelerated products are priced for less underwriting accuracy, as I've said, therefore have a higher automation level, sometimes as low as 30, sometimes as high as 80%, right? And just so you know, the price is the denominator there. That's what makes that possible. We're all, right now, the industry is achieving about the same level of underwriting accuracy, whether it be instant or full. Maybe there's some nuances there, but broadly, the market is within a set range. So how can we have the best of both worlds? I think that's what the market is driving towards, and you saw it in the poll. How can we have the benefit of both price and automation? Instant underwriting accuracy needs to approach full underwriting accuracy. That's the only way that we can do it. We need to be able to capture enough information instantaneously and use it effectively enough to be able to have the full underwriting accuracy in the moment of sale. That's the goal that we're all chasing. And there's only partial solutions out there. There's no complete solution. We still have full underwriting, and it still serves a really, really important purpose, but it's certainly not reduced down to its minimum. We're far from that. There are many challenges, as we all know. One is just the technical challenge of what are the rules? What are the models? How do they work together? In what manner? How does that all work? And how do you design that? How do we design that in a way that actually helps us achieve this goal of fully underwritten prices instantly? How do we do that? That's the technical challenge. There's a technology challenge as well. How do you administer? Once you have this great idea and you have what you think the solution is, how do you administer and maintain it? How do you monitor it? How do you configure it? How do you make the system flexible enough to evolve over time? So that's the technology hurdle. There's a very big business hurdle as well, as I think we've all been through pieces of this, and I've been through it on many different sides. Accepting the new underwriting paradigm can be difficult. Getting comfortable with it can be difficult. Allowing it to access your core business can be really, can be a huge hurdle for the business to get over. So really just simply accepting the new underwriting paradigms, it's a very difficult business hurdle to get over. The second sort of business hurdle, I would say, is allowing data science teams to stay focused. Data science, the job was a very hot job a couple of years ago, and now it's sort of fallen from the top of the list. And I think, there's many factors there, but certainly one of them is the insurance industry tends to not concretely know what to do with the teams, and therefore there's struggles, internal struggles, and struggles on priorities. And I've seen it all throughout the market. So I think we've all seen versions of it. So from a business side, allowing the data science teams to stay focused, particularly on underwriting, if underwriting is a core problem for you, is really something that's very important, and it's a huge challenge. Huge challenge to be successful at. And regulatory, I think we all know. Remaining nimble and transparent with a strong business understanding of the models and model rule systems is the key, I think, to being able to respond to changing regulation, but also to ensure that we are compliant in many different ways. So digital underwriting, it's still an unsolved problem, but I think if we can overcome the hurdles that I've described, and I'll talk a little bit about simple ways to touch on those, we can drive the industry forward. I think to a future where we don't need to choose between price and automation, at least for the vast majority of the population. Full underwriting won't go away, but we still are a long ways away from reducing it down to what I think its minimum could be. So 4 ways to enhance machine learning AI in digital underwriting. Properly defining the problem. It sounds simple, but it's actually quite hard to be successful at. And because data science teams are not business experts, I think we've all got our fill of that. Business experts often don't understand data science and can often make requests that are more a means to an end. Build me this model, incorporate this data source, do Y. And that actually makes the data science teams very comfortable. They're very comfortable to sit there and get requirements from the business folks. But this disconnect can lead to working on the wrong things, plain and simple. And I think that happens a lot in the industry. The data science teams end up exploring dead ends, maybe where they don't have enough data or where it wasn't really thought out in the beginning. Reinventing the wheel, we all love that one, especially the actuaries, the data scientists coming to the actuaries with something they already know. That's always fun, but it's part of the process. Or preventing an innovative or creative solution that the data science team would have otherwise seen if they had the full context of the problem, if they were challenged to be business experts and operate in the business domain. So the other side of this is many people, business and data scientists alike, they love to jump to the idea that the model's a solution. But models are only good as the data that you give them, and oftentimes the data doesn't exist or is not large enough or has problems and simply can't be used the way that we thought. And sometimes you can discover that fast, and sometimes you can discover that really slow, which is what you want to avoid, I think. But to help close the gap, data science and business representative, they need to work together to form a deeper understanding of the space, allow iteration on not just the solution, but the problem itself until both sides are confident that the solution is a business solution, which meets business goals. I think innovation is an iterative process. The results from each iteration need to be interpreted flexibly and allowed to influence both the problem and the solution, or else we're not going to be able to discover what we don't know. We're going to be hyper-focused on refining the current approach rather than discovering what information we don't use today, or discovering what information from today that we absolutely can eliminate now that we have rules and models working together. I think we're better prepared to move the industry forward when we work together and on the right things. Data science and business experts must form a partnership. They have to meet each other in the middle to discover the unknown together, embrace each other's worlds and knowledge, remain flexible and open-minded on both the problem and the solution. Reimagining data. How do you compare the value of a data source? I think the answer is it really depends. It depends on how you're using the data source and in what order you're using the data source even. There are effective rules and there are ineffective rules. There are effective models and there are ineffective models. Generally speaking, rules work best, I think, on low frequency, high severity information. They take individuals out of the general population with which we're trying to segment, and they put them directly into high risk buckets like the table rated, decline, or other buckets like that. Models work best on high frequency information, and they can form their own opinion about the severity of that information, provided that the severity is credible. They work very well on the low to mid end of the risk spectrums, but because of that, they need to be supported at the high end of the risk spectrum, oftentimes with rules. I think It's clear to many of us that the best underwriting outcomes are achieved, simply put, when rules and models work together, but how they work together, on what data sources, and in what order is still very much an open question. I think data sources have a lot of overlap in their ability to predict risk. And we haven't properly in the past, I think, valued that overlap or put a number on it. It's very difficult. Therefore, each source's value is incremental and order matters. This is why organizations are working on evidence triage. This would be their individual approach to finding the most cost benefit optimized way to ordering data at what stage to help with what part of the risk. As an industry, I think we need to reimagine the way we think about data, how it's used, what its value is, and how to maximize its cost-benefit ratio. Asking what is the relative value of this data source to something else? It's sort of an incomplete question. A more complete question would be, where on the risk spectrum is this data source's value concentrated? Is that part of the risk spectrum a place where my business strategy needs to be improved? And is the optimal way to order and use this data, what is the optimal way to order and use this data to maximize the cost benefit in the underwriting process? So it's complicated. Where I think the answer is very different from organization to organization, the format of the solution consistently returns to rules and models working together in a flexible and transparent technology platform, which is easy to configure, monitor, and adjust. Right? I think change is a constant, in other words. Bridging the gap between data science and business strategy. Modeling often is the easiest part of the discovery process. Building the correct models to support the desired business outcome is more difficult. We already discussed the need for data scientists and business experts to form a partnership to ensure complete understanding of the problem, business context, and business strategy, but I want to take this a bit further. Within data science teams, we absolutely cannot accept this mentality of just tell me what to do, just tell me the requirements, and it's fairly common. Unfortunately, we need to require that data science teams, particularly those working on underwriting, become business experts. So they really digest the space and they become specialists in this space. We need to take every opportunity to upskill actuaries and underwriters into the space and thoroughly train new data scientists in the business domain as an area of focus. I really believe this, or else the gap will continue to remain. That's the data science side. On the business side, I think we need to push as well. We need to identify those individuals who are most adjacent, most accepting, most interested in this stuff, most adjacent to data science, and require from those individuals that they have a working understanding of the data, the modeling techniques, the process of modeling and creating models. And we need to train these data adjacent champions to review, challenge, and even direct the data science teams towards a better solution. I think cross-functional teams help, and we all tout cross-functional teams, and I think that's important, but it needs to be reinforced culturally, I believe. The two sides need to equally embrace the unknown and actively work together to close the gap by actively learning about each other's domains to a degree where it can influence their strategy. Actuaries need to know about the modeling work, underwriters need to know about the modeling work so that they can think differently about their problems in their space. And data scientists really will be completely ineffective if they don't do their side of it as well. Okay. I think business representatives in data science, they must each stretch their understanding, creativity, and acceptance of the unknown. If we can blend their thinking, we'll be able to fully optimize the underwriting paradigm. It's fundamentally a system of rules and models working together. And one benefit of using models is that the underwriting decision just fundamentally becomes more continuous, which means it's easier to control things that would otherwise be part of our strategic plan. It's easier to control class sizes, and it's easier to sort of understand and predict and target risk levels for each class size. What this means is we can shift from the management of cases to the management of portfolios, and business experts can become data-driven strategists who carefully calibrate risk consistent with their desired outcome. We'll be able to choose what underwriting information is consistent with our philosophy, values, and business strategy. Systems of rules and models with technology. Rules are not most efficient for all information types. I think we can agree on that. If we've all seen sort of the the laboratory values, the LFT charts, and all these different rules, thousands, hundreds and thousands, hundreds or thousands of rules sometimes. They're not the most efficient way to deal with all information types. Models definitely aren't always the solution either. They need to be complement with rules at the higher end of the risk spectrum. And we know that models and rules work best together. The way they work together, on what data sources, in what order, is organization specific. And it depends on the target risk profile and therefore the business strategy. Each organization's specific solution to digital underwriting is unsolved. But I think the structure of the solution is becoming more clear. Rules and models working together in a flexible and transparent system, which is efficient to configure, monitor, and adjust. Whether you buy, build, or enhance, a system like this is likely required to meet the current market demand for digital underwriting and keep up with the pace of change in the space. Whether that is due to new data sources, changing regulations, or increased price pressure. I think as instant underwriting accuracy improves, we will continue to have increased price pressure on instant products. And I think that's good for people. In the beginning of the presentation, I listed 4 hurdles. Technical was the structure to configure the model rule system. Technology, the platform to efficiently administer the system. Regulation, which we all know, and business. I think business is really the challenge. There are many vendors available to help overcome some of those technical, technological, and regulatory hurdles. But I think organizations must allow their businesses to evolve by incentivizing a culture of collaboration, acceptance, creativity, fundamentally embracing this idea of iteration, and allowing and incentivizing team members on both sides to have personal growth on cross-functional business and data science teams. If we can flexibly and creatively define and solve problems, reimagine how we think about data, bridge the gap between data science and business strategy, and effectively administer those learnings on the right platform, then we can meet market demand. I think we can come closer to ending full underwriting as we know it. What I mean by that is reduce it down to its minimum. I don't think it's going to go away, but what portion of the population will it always remain for? We can expand full access to insurance. There'll be many people who can get it who wouldn't be able to get it before, who wouldn't be interested in going through a full underwriting process. We can reduce the instant prices, which I think is good for everyone. We can offer alternative, perhaps more inclusive underwriting paradigms faster. We can produce more stable results with less anti-selection. And we can compete based on deploying our specific risk strategies. So I think that's all I have today. We'll keep it high level, but I think it's important to remember these 4 things. They're very high level, but folks don't, we still don't execute them well. Properly defining the problem, again, listening to the team, allowing the team to be creative and flexible in the way that it iterates, allowing the problem itself to change over time, rather than feeding the data science team or the research team a partial solution. I think this data source is going to be big, or I think we're going to try to use this health and wellness strategy. I think allow them to become business experts and allow them to help shape what the problems that we're solving are. Allow the data science individuals and those data science adjacent people to be part of the strategy process. Reimagining data. I think when we build the muscle to have rules and models working together, we implicitly have a better way to value data and information, because now we can extract the maximum value with today's technologies, the maximum value out of each data source. And what we learn is the answer to what data source is more valuable or less valuable is not really a great question to ask. We can be much more targeted than that. We can choose a data source based on the part of the risk spectrum that we're interested in achieving more segmentation, or achieving higher acceptance rates, or reducing but the number of declines, but increasing their severity. We can choose where we want to target, choose data sources based on targeting that information, but we can still have a system that's easier to maintain than if we were to maintain maintain thousands of rules. I think we can work together to find the balance of rules and models working together. And what that means is allowing the rules to evolve in a complementary way to the models. There are things that models do well, and there are things that rules do well. Models love information that they have on everybody. Rules work best on information where, okay, if it's there, it's bad. Those sort of knockout type rules. But allowing our conception of the underwriting paradigm to sort of evolve in this way, where we reduce the rules down to what's necessary. We add more rules to say, okay, we found more stuff that's absolutely necessary, particularly to correct for these model inadequacies. And then we allow the model to do a lot of the heavy lifting on up to 80% of the population, I think. Okay, so we need to once we have this sort of muscle in place, we can reimagine what data value is, how to use it, how to configure that system to achieve our business outcomes. But number three, we can't do that alone. Nobody can do it. And I think those folks who have 20 years of experience doing data science and evolving systems of rules to achieve a specific business underwriting outcome, and they're experts in both spaces, they don't necessarily exist today. There are folks who can touch on that space, but there's not a whole lot. So for now, we need to train, we need to grow those people into those places, and we need to incentivize people to work together, or else we're not going to solve the right problems. We're not going to iterate in a way that actually gets us closer to a business outcome. And then, of course, systems with rules and models and technology. One constant is change. And I think one thing that I can say comfortably is that any system that deploys an underwriting paradigm in the future needs to be flexible, extremely flexible, to change data sources, to change rules, to change the way the rules and the data sources interact. But fundamentally, the system, I think, should be designed in a way that allows you to answer and test these questions and react to them and monitor what the influence is on the population. And what will that allow us to do is sort of start somewhere, but evolve towards a place where we really do get close to that. Almost everybody goes through an instant process. And then that's when we're going to sort of make the industry, change the industry, I think, for the better. So I think that's all I have. So I'm going to stop presenting and pass it back to Sol.
Thank you so much, James. That was extremely insightful. And if anyone wants to connect with James, please feel free to ask myself or any of the Plug and Play stuff, and we'll be happy to get you guys connected. Also, if you have any questions for James, we're going to have the panel Q&A right after the startup pitches, so save those questions for then. And now, following up with the startups, we're going to start with iCover, followed by Lazarus. The startups are going to have 5 minutes to pitch, and please answer the poll right after the startups end their presentations. And as I mentioned, this will be followed by the Q&A session. So to start up with iCover, I'll pass it on to Nicole, the co-founder and COO.
One of the most exciting uses for AI and underwriting, and what we've actually modeled iCover after, is really delivering a fast, simple experience for the customer and making a binding offer at that point of sale. And really, when we think about this fundamental shift from moving underwriting from a back office function to the front office, it really is only possible with AI. And it really is the key to changing the way insurance is designed, priced, and sold, whether that's through trusted agents, through a direct-to-consumer channel, or affiliate channels. And the value that AI brings to insurance is really using that data differently. There's a lot of data out there today. There's new data sources that are emerging, but it's really using that data differently to improve that point of sale customer experience. And when I think about improving that experience, I think about reducing the number of questions to just the optimal disclosures, and then leveraging that data to really do the analysis and price that application. We're also looking at the ability to assess most of the cases, if not all, and not just the 35% of those low-risk cases that are part of an accelerated or a simplified issue platform. And when you think about that, right, if you're getting a 35% offer rate for those programs, you're actually disappointing more consumers than you're satisfying. We're also looking at consistent and better risk segmentation through the automation and fine-tuning of algorithms and AI. And of course, we can then move into this world of custom pricing and custom coverages. And I'll dig into a little bit of detail here, but when we think about underwriting today, we think about those buckets. That could be accept, refer, decline buckets, or they could be the table rating buckets or broad definitions of table ratings. So in today's world, you could be at the top end of the range of a table or the bottom end of the range of the table, and you all pay the same price. But with AI and the fine-tuning of the algorithms and the segmentation, we can start to actually make offers to people based on their risk profile and where they sit within the table structure. Now we'll talk a little bit about how iCover uses AI and the algorithms. We have static algorithms in our production environment, and that's by design because we want to avoid that situation. We've all seen that with Uber where your ride is $15 and with the simple refresh of the screen it jumps to $70 because of demand pricing and unsupervised algorithms in the production environment. We certainly don't want something similar happening in underwriting, and I don't think the regulators or the customers would be pleased with that. So what we do is we first look at the individual disclosures and data sources and rate them independently using baselines, predictable baselines. We then cross-examine the data sources and we look for non-disclosures, we look for comorbidities, and then we'll look for patterns within the data that allows us to score that application within the boundaries of the baseline. And then offline, what we'll do is run our machine learning loops to improve the results. And when we talk about results, we're specifically talking about the instant offer rate. We're looking at the risk assessment and then also looking for opportunities for what we call dynamic requirements. And this is if we can order another piece of data or evidence, would it improve our offer rate and our risk segmentation? So when we do this offline, it's really part of this function of monitoring the results that are coming through the platform. And when we monitor the results, this really actually helps us improve these results because it gives us a target for what we want that machine learning to detect and then recommend. So just looking at the instant offers, the first thing that we'll look at is what types of cases are not being offered, or maybe we're looking at, are we accurate with making the point of sale offers? So once we can identify cases that are not currently being offered, we can run a machine learning loop to say, well, what do we need to do to change and improve that offer rate? And then we can look at the recommendations and the opportunities and look at it and say, is this really the risk that we want to introduce? And we'll either move that out into the production environment or not. The second area is in risk assessment, and there's a couple of different targets that we'll look at. First is, are we over or underestimating the risk in production? And if so, what do we need to do to fix it? We can also look at research that's coming out of the National Institutes of Health, JAMA, American Medical Associations, and we can look at that disease outlook and say, what do we need to do to make changes in our algorithms, and what will the impact of those changes potentially be on the mortality experience? And then the last result that we're looking at is dynamic requirements. And this is where James had talked about optimizing the data for your results. So one of the things that we look at is, particularly in these challenging cases where we don't have the confidence to make a point of sale offer. So we can look at and run a machine learning algorithm and say, well, what do we have to change in order to make a confidence in that decision? So looking at, say, a case where they might have a more complicated heart condition, do we reflex and get digital health records, digital claims records, or any other data to help make that decision an offer? And then we also look at it and say, even if we could make that an offer, are we comfortable with the risk? And is this a case that would ultimately be placed. So we'll look at these different areas, and this is the opportunity of running those machine learning loops offline. It protects the consumers, and it allows you to really control the environment that is in production. And I'll end with talking about regulations. And I know that these can be burdensome. They can also be confusing. So what iCover did before we built our solution is we talked with the regulators to understand their concerns, to understand the boundaries of today and where the regulations were moving to in the future. And this allowed us to construct and build a system that could be used in today's environment, and then would also be able to grow and take advantage of the new data sources in the future. And when we looked at these rules and when we talked to the regulators, we really found out that it's there to protect the consumers. And I'm going to focus on 3 areas today, and it really does make sense, right? The first area is that the data can't be and the results can't be biased, right? You have to deliver an unbiased model. And bias can be introduced by data sources such as credit or social media, but it can also be introduced by the order in which you evaluate the data and by the weighting of different data sources. So the regulators alerted us early on about the use of credit. They didn't say you can't use it, they just gave us advice on if you were going to use credit data, this is how you should use it. Secondly, the data and the algorithms have to really be about the individual that's being underwritten. I know it seems obvious, but it's amazing when you talk to people how many want to use Facebook, how many want to use aggregate data on a zip code or a region or a specific group of individuals. But it really has to be about the individual being underwritten and not the group that that individual belongs to. For example, you might have data that suggests that someone in your household is a smoker. That's not necessarily the proposed insured. Or you might belong to a zip code that likes to visit McDonald's 4 or 5 times a week, but maybe that's not your behavior. Or you might be part of a region, right? We see that there's different health and wellness statistics that come out of different regions of America, but that isn't necessarily indicative of your own personal health profile. And lastly, the results have to be causal. You really have to have decision outcomes that reflect good data science. And I know, what does good data science mean? So you have to be traceable, you have to be explainable, and really it has to be causal. I'll give 2 examples of that. One is that we know that data and medical science shows the link between smoking and increased mortality. That is a causal relationship. A coincidental relationship would be, for example, that the stock market has lower prices during a full moon. That might be a correlation that can be proved with statistics, but it's not causal. And that's a huge difference in why data science and good data science practices have to be put in place. And with that, I will end the presentation and want to thank you again for this opportunity to talk about one of my favorite topics. Thanks.
Take a moment to fill the poll. And as I mentioned earlier, any questions you have for Nicole can be answered in the Q&A, or you can always reach out to us and to facilitate any intros. And now the second startup of the day is Lazarus. Lazarus Forms is a data extraction API that makes cluttered and structured PDFs as usable as any JSON. And now I'll let Ariel, the CEO and co-founder of Lazarus.
Insurance has a document problem. I think we all know that. Someone earlier mentioned using unstructured data as part of the underwriting process being a core challenge. And I mean, part of that problem is not just text coming in as free text about a specific patient or a specific person who's trying to get a policy. Another part of it is that most of that data is trapped in PDFs. And the way that usually you go about trying to get the data out of PDFs is manual data entry. So you have someone go in and read through the medical record, annotate and identify any important pieces like any pre-existing conditions or whether or not they have diabetes, and you have to do it manually. An approach that people have also taken is using existing OCR and IDP solutions, but they kind of suck. So they're slow, they're expensive, they require constant training, which is the big crux. So for every single document type you want to use, you have to train a specific model for those document types. In some cases, even for every single template that you want to run through. And then they also have low performance on handwriting, and that starts to matter when you're doing life underwriting because physicians really like taking physical notes and then scanning them into the EMR for some reason. So that's where we come in. So ReCai is our core and flagship product, and it's a large language model that can do advanced document understanding. That's a whole lot of buzzwords, but what that effectively means is you can upload a document, ask any question, and get an answer out of that document. And you can ask multiple questions, send them in a sequence, send them in a pipeline, have sub-questions, or even fine-tune it for specific outputs. But the most important piece of it is it can work on any document of any size in over 140 languages without the need for training. So it works zero shot. And so how does it do that, right? So I mentioned LLMs, large language models. Most of us know what those are. But in case you don't, think ChatGPT, think Bloom, think Palm, think Cohere's models, etc. Most LLMs see text like this. So they see one token or word after another in a long line and a long sequence, and they try to predict what's next on the end. That's good when you're dealing with discrete data. However, if you're dealing with structured data, you start to have a problem, or semi-structured data, for example, documents. So this, you might be able to figure out what this document is about based off the text, but it's a whole lot easier if you know where the words are and their locations. And so ReCai has been trained to see the words themselves, so the tokens, and their bounding box locations, so where they are on the page. So where other models see the other thing, ReCai sees this, the structured document. Makes it a whole lot easier to ask questions about it. Second component of it is it's more extractive than it's generative. So that means a very, very low hallucination rate, sub 1%. For comparison, GPT-4 has a 7% hallucination rate. Hallucinations when models make stuff up. And on top of that, we give you decision confidence and a context location. So you have explainability built in off rip. You don't have to kind of figure out why it made a given decision. It'll tell you. And so all this technology enables ReCai to do a bunch of tasks zero shot meaning without training. And so I'll go really quickly through all of them. It can do zero shot extraction. So it can pull a field out, like what is the member ID? It can do zero shot classification. So you can ask, is this a prior authorization, an insurance application, or something else? And it'll be able to pull that out. It can do zero shot summarization. So it can summarize a whole document, for example, a medical record, without having to be trained on that specific task. It can do zero shot decisioning. So answer yes, no questions, answer true, false questions without needing to be prompted to do that. So you can just ask a question like, is the patient named Juan Rodriguez? It can do zero shot reasoning. So it can ask questions or answer questions like, why does the patient need X? Or why did this company claim a loss in 2015? Or, why did they break their leg if you're doing a claim, for example? And then finally, it can do zero shot understanding. So this is a little bit more nuanced. So the question we have here is, what question should I ask to get the answer peanuts? But it can do weirder stuff. And so it can be fine-tuned downstream to do a whole lot of really cool stuff. So I'm just going to skip past this. Works out of the box. You don't have to train anything. It's developer first, and it matches state-of-the-art over 25 tasks, which means you don't have to manage 40 different models to do a bunch of different stuff. So it's smarter, better, and faster. But yeah, going into use cases, number one, medical records. This is our most popular one because medical records are a mess. They can be anywhere between 5 pages and 5,000 pages. They're never properly formatted. And if you're lucky enough to get stuff from the EHR, awesome, but that usually only paints 30% of the patient's total history. The rest of it's all stuck in PDFs. And so we're able to pull data out of those PDFs, instantly identify key conditions, and summarize the entire medical record into a clean format. We've done that both on the claims and underwriting side, and it takes a minute to summarize a 100-page medical record. It's pretty cool. For doc review, so specifically, if you are either taking pre-existing policies or prior carrier policies, or you're asking, or you're just trying to review a bunch of other documentation for whatever other reason, whether it's litigation or something else, You can do that across every document by just asking the right questions, not having to actually train the model at all, which is pretty cool. And finally, for loss runs, if you're just trying to process a loss run and you don't want to build a template model for every single possible carrier, we've done that. And there's tons more as well of things that you can do with this, and it can also be fine-tuned to do even weirder stuff. Like we automated a full claims process 90% of the time using just this model, fine-tuned to the preferences of claims handlers, which is pretty cool. And yeah, so that's us. We're a team of 26, based out of Boston. And if you want to connect with us, you can catch us here or at Summit. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Ariel. That was awesome. And I think now we can go on to the Q&A panel. So if anyone has any questions for James, Nicole, or Ariel, now is the time to ask. You can either write them on the Q&A feature or just jump in. To start, we do have some questions that you guys sent before, and I think this is my favorite, so maybe we can start with that one. Someone asked, within underwriting, what is the biggest untapped opportunity? What hurdles do we need to overcome to achieve these opportunities?
Maybe I can take the first pass, and if anyone wants to elaborate, please feel free. But, you know, I think the lowest instant price wins. You know, that's the game that everyone's playing right now. I think we want to be able to do everything instantly and have the lowest price. And I think the playing field is ripe for pickings right now, because, you know, we're developing many industries, many companies, many startups, Score, ReMark. We all have more capabilities than we're able to act on, I think, because it takes time to bring things to market, right? And so what I can see among the capabilities in the marketplace is that we are about to attack this problem and materially move those percentages from, you know, 0% or 30% way up. And I think we're about to do that. So what's nice is we'll be able to do it many different ways with many different data sources. And I think we'll be able to choose what data sources align best with our values and what we want to, how we want to separate individuals and how we don't want to separate individuals, which is great. But yeah, I think it's very simple. Biggest opportunity is, you know, doing things instantly for cheap, the lowest price, right? I mean, we all want a lower price for insurance, so including me. So
thank you, James.
I'd like to add a few nuances to that. Appreciate the perspective about price and price is king. I think what we're finding with some of the newer consumers that have grown up in the digital world is that experience matters. So some people will pay up for an experience and some people won't think twice. So you can Google and find great prices, but if I can ask half the questions and I can get you in and out of that experience by leveraging AI inside of 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, that might be the key to locking in that sale versus somebody who uses AI and just layers that onto a traditional application process.
I can tell you, Nicole, it's still true for me. I'd much rather go through a phone process. And if I can get it done in 2 minutes, I probably would have more insurance than I have now.
Same here. Yes.
Someone asked on the chat, as an underwriter, what are a few things I can do with ChatGPT right now to make my job easier?
It feels like an Ariel question, but I can say that I like to use it for job descriptions and get you most of the way there. That's an easy thing. That's a little less controversial.
Yeah. And I mean, I would say, I would kind of echo your same sentiment there, James. You're going to want to use something like a ChatGPT on less mission critical applications, things that have a human reviewer like actively there, and places where you can basically fill a, I don't want to call it a fluff writing gap, basically a fluff writing gap, right? Where the end product doesn't matter a ton. You can, write out 80% of a blog post. You can write out 80% of a given report. Please proofread it before you actually submit it. Or you can write a job description, things like that. ChatGPT is already pretty good at that. If you're going to be using something like GPT-4, it's a little bit better at more advanced reasoning. The biggest sticking point for most people is that hallucination rate of 7% probably makes it untenable for most like actual internal underwriting applications. But I've seen some really cool things on the consumer facing side. Sorry, I can't be super helpful here. Basically, anything that you're doing right now where you're typing out for several hours at a time that you think you could probably outsource to an intern, you can probably outsource to ChatGPT, would be an answer there. Everything else is a little too risky, I would say. And I mean, I'm also super biased. I would say use us, but yeah.
The second question on the chat is regarding underwriting during the life of the policy. How can you constantly assess risk in order to the insured be correctly priced and protected regarding his or her life situation?
I'll be happy to start off the conversation with that. That's a very interesting conversation, or question, I should say. In the United States, we are restricted from doing what we call post-issue underwriting. We have been talking to the regulators about this concept because we know that that could be a really great opportunity for both the insurer and the insured. But the regulations are very restrictive and you're not necessarily allowed to do that. But I think AI opens up this opportunity to really design a product that offers the best protection to a consumer and allow repricing. But right now we're really restricted from a regulatory standpoint.
That's maybe I can just follow up, Nicole. I think that's a fantastic answer. And it's absolutely true for the US market. I just want to say for ReMark, we have some health and wellness solutions, particularly in other markets where we're exploring, what the value of that continuous data is. And, if we ignore the limitations for a minute and just dream, continuous information, I think it has the potential, sort of in line with my presentation, has the potential to change the value of information, right? If you think about activity data, taking a sample, like 1 day's activity data and its predictive value, or 1 day's, blood pressure reading and its predictive value, that's obviously much lower than a sample over time, right? What you can see in a sample over time is much more information, right? So even the volatility in your steps, the days that you take off, how consistent or inconsistent you are, if those steps inconsistencies line up with holidays and line up with a lack of sleep, and if your heart rate is going up a lot during the day, stress, how many times you're working out, just steps, right? You can extract so much information from heart rate, steps, and things like that. I just wanted to say that the continuous nature of data totally changes the nature of the predictive value of the data source. And I think if we can, and we're learning a lot about it through our health and wellness solutions like BAM and Good Life and things like that in the Asian markets particularly. But it's really exciting. I think it's really exciting, and it's important. It flexes the importance of being flexible, allowing these paradigms to change over time, and putting the muscles and technology in place to go with that flow.
Thank you, James. It looks like we ran out of time for questions. But if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. We'll get you guys connected to all the panelists. So yeah, just a quick reminder that our summer summit is coming up in 2 weeks, from June 6th to June 8th. On the first day, we have InsurTech, FinTech, and Crypto Expo. So we hope to see you all there. And again, please feel free to reach out to any of us. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the webinar.